What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Wednesday, November 1st, 2023. As always, I am your co-host, PK, alongside my other co-host, Phil. Phil, I went to a haunted house on Thursday, Seven Gates out here in Niagara Falls, but I think it's in Wheatfield. I don't know. It's blurred lines. What are your feelings towards screaming as you go through a haunted house, like spooky scares?
I don't even really know where you're going with that. What, like, people screaming as they get scared, or somebody screaming at you to scare you?
The people going through it screaming because they get scared.
I mean, if it's genuine,
Okay, good.
That's fair. But then the people that scream way too much, that are way over the top and just kind of annoying, that gets annoying real quick. But if it's genuine and you're actually scared, I mean, I don't really scream. When I get scared, it's all internal for me. I jump, sure. And the haunted houses I've been to that have spooked me at times, I will jump and then admit to the worker who's there and be like, wow, you really got me, or that really got me. And I usually just jump, though. I don't scream. But I know people scream. That's a natural reaction. But if you're doing it over the top and just screaming your head off pretty much the entire time, it kind of ruins it for everyone else.
I would agree with that. I wasn't so much screaming as it was statements, where it was like, oh, Jesus, holy crap, please stop, those kind of things.
Yeah,
and
I do that as well.
The group I went with thought it was very funny, found it very comical. And there were three houses. The first two, I was the last one, so I got all the secondary scares and the people that scare you because you're last in line. And then the last one, which was apparently the scariest one, they made me go first. So I got no breaks, and I don't do well with jump scares. I can do a lot of things. It's the jump scares that get me, and I kind of do what you do, where it was like I make the statement first, and then I say that was a good one. And there was one person I walked by where I went, I know you're real, and it's still going to scare me. And they waited till I walked by, and then they jumped at me, and it scared me again. So those are my haunted house moments, and they will continue until I pass away, probably walking through a haunted house, because I have high blood pressure and it's not good for being scared.
Yeah, we are recording this pre-Halloween. I know it'll be post-Halloween when it gets posted, but I am wearing my Spirit of Halloween jersey that I got last year, which is fun. It's black-orange and has the Spirit of Halloween logo. It's pretty spooky, but I would say, as far as haunted houses go, they're a lot of fun, and I think the ideal location that you want to be in a group of friends is the middle for sure. You're just protected on both sides. You don't get the initial scare. You don't get the, like you said, the back end scare. Middle is definitely where it's at. I think first is, I don't know. I feel like first is bad, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like a lot of the workers know that the person going first like is forced into that, and that they kind of let that person go by and then try to scare everybody else because they know that everyone's waiting for that first person to get scared. So it's actually like a bigger scare for them when they get the middle and back and let the first person go, because then you're not expecting it. So first seems really bad and is the scariest going through because you're terrified the whole time, not knowing what's going to happen. But I feel like the workers kind of sometimes let that person go to get the other people.
I agree. As somebody who was in both positions, both terrifying.
Yeah,
first one's more terrifying because you don't know what to expect. The
You're like
second, or the
like,
last one's more terrifying because of exactly what you said. The people are waiting for you to go by. So, if you have strong opinions on where you want to be in a line of people going through a haunted house, you can follow us and let us know on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X plus Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com, and look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. As people looking at the video, I'm not alone. I got Reed right here. I'm not a good weatherman here. And then Molly's back there. Maggie's down in the basement. I'm home alone, so I'm watching the dogs. They're both sleepy right now. So hopefully they continue that. But if you hear noises, that's why. And there's more noises because the Buffalo Bills won their Thursday night game. I know you're listening to this, and it's Wednesday, and you're going, oh, that happened a week ago. Well, guess what? We're still once a week, so we have to talk about it here. They won 24-18 against the Bucs. Again, Thursday night. Josh Allen came to life. The wide receivers and the pass catchers came to life. This offense actually looked legit for at least the first half. Phil, what are your thoughts on the overall makeup of the game? I guess we don't have to dive into it too much because it has been a week and it's been talked to death, but since this is our first time mentioning it, any key points that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think the Bills being successful with the offense outside of players named Diggs was fantastic. I think that's one of the first times we've seen it all year, and it's a huge, arguably the biggest talking point of this whole game to me. I know you love when the offense peppers Diggs with 12 to 14 targets because he is the best offensive weapon they have, and I agree, but at the same time, we've been asking for anybody else on that offense to step up, so to see Shakir and Gabe Davis have the games they did, and even Kincaid had another really big game, I think it was huge for the offense to have somebody else and multiple players step up and give not only Diggs a break, but give Allen just other looks. I think the up-tempo speed of the offense was something we've been looking for a while. You mentioned it on the last podcast about the last game, how they looked really slow the entire game, trying to kind of weather the storm, give the defense a break, play a very defensive, conservative game, similar to how Dallas has played their games for the first half of the year. And this game, you could tell right off the bat, they were just going no huddle a lot. The speed of the offense was really, really fast, and it worked really well. It was just the higher tempo offense we've seen in the past, and they really went after the offense and kind of left whatever the defense was going to do to itself. I thought they did really well with that. And the change in the offensive game plan style, all of it, Allen rushing the ball, like the entire flip of the script of the offense. It was good to see them change so much from a game-to-game perspective. We've seen the offense not look good for a few weeks now, and then all of a sudden everything that we were kind of asking for, the high tempo, Allen rushing, the entire, other key players getting involved, all of it kind of came together, like you said, at least for the first half / third quarter-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like their offense went back to what was working for them in years past, where there was design runs for Allen. It was up-tempo. Everything was quick-moving, and it more seemed like Allen was much more comfortable in that situation, and his stats back that up. I mean, his only blemish was the interception, and it was a great play by the defense where it was a tipped up pass and the defensive lineman just made the catch. But the first drive, 10 plays, 77 yards for a field goal. Second one, they went 8 plays, 59 yards, and it was a terrible play call. I didn't like that play call. Turnover on downs from, I think, like 2. They went for it on fourth down. I love the call to go for it, but bad play design. Next one, 5 plays, 23 yards for another touchdown, then the 1-play interception, and then 9 plays, 75 yards for another touchdown. That offense was just moving and grooving in the whole first half. My only dislike for the offense was the second half. No points in the final 25 minutes. It kind of seemed like they were kind of just toying with the Bucs if they really wanted to, and they made the play calls for it, and they kept the pedal to the metal. I think they could have put up well over 40 points here, but they didn't really have to. After going up 24-10, they had 4 straight punts, and those drives consisted of 6 plays for 26 yards, 9 plays for 36 yards, 5 plays for 18 yards, and 6 plays for 29 yards. So it seemed like in the second half they pulled off of what they were doing well. That's my only issue with the offense was the second half. But you could definitely see, and this is what we said on the last show, and everybody was saying, hey, the defense is the problem. The defense is the problem. It's not the offense, it's the defense. When you score points and you build a lead, it helps your defense because they can play a certain style and put their head down and go for it, and the offense has to play catch-up on the other side. That's my issue. The only touchdown in the first half that the defense gave up was due to the interception that put the ball on the Bills' 23. I love the corners. I liked Bernard. Bernard. He had a nice bounce back game, but the offense helped the defense in this situation. That's what we were saying on the last episode. That's what I said on Talking Buffalo was the defense is not the main issue. The offense needs to score points and get up early to help your defense, and that's exactly what we saw in this game.
Yeah, before we move on from the offense, it's unfortunate, I think, that Allen needs to run in order to get his head in the game, but you could tell there was a huge difference in just his attitude throughout the entire game in the first half when he got the ability to run, when he gets hit, when he scores those touchdowns rushing. He's Josh Allen. He's back to his swagger. He's back to his intensity. Like, I think everything about his game changes when he's able to run. When he has to sit back there in the pocket play it safe, pass calmly. I think he just gets like lulled to sleep himself and gets bored of what he's doing. I feel like he just needs to run in order to stay mentally in the game, which is, I don't know. I feel like as a professional, you should be able to stay in the game no matter what. But if that's what it's going to take, I think they need to continue, especially early in the game, getting him those opportunities. I think their switch to having him not run is ideal because you don't want to see him get injured. But like you said, I think last episode that they switched it way too far. I think they understood that as well. You could see in this game, they allowed him a few design rushing plays, and he played in general much better. And then the biggest issue I have with the Bills' offense in this game, not only like you mentioned, taking the foot off the gas, something that McDermott's era seems to not understand at all, is when they are up, they just stop playing on offense. And like you said, those drives, 5 plays, 6 plays, like you want to win a game and you want to keep those drives going to kill the clock. You don't do that by punting the ball that many times second half. I just don't understand at this point how he has not learned to keep trying to score. I don't like. It's not even like you're doing it to control the clock. Like you're not having these really long run-only drives that are killing the clock. You're going 5, 6 plays and you're done. If you keep the offense moving and long and sustaining drives and then scoring, that's how you put teams away. And they just still don't seem like they've learned that. And then, like you mentioned, the goal line inefficiency is just atrocious. I don't know if this new signing that they just had to the practice squad with Leonard Fournette, I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment, but I don't know if that's going to change anything to what they're trying to do. But I don't know. They're so bad with first and goal to go. They just don't seem to have anything figured out in that kind of game plan. They just don't know what to do on the goal line. Why they don't have Allen try to run it in himself more often, I don't know, but they seem to just not have a game plan when they get that close to the goal line. And like you said, 2 chances from the 2-yard line, not able to punch it in. It's just kind of embarrassing at this point.
Yeah, like you mentioned real quick with the last bits of the offense, Josh Allen, second play that they had was a designed run, so that speaks to exactly what you're saying. Get involved early, get him running early, and gets his head in the game. Second one, like you mentioned, Leonard Fournette, I think that is less of a move for now. I think it's a possible move for the future if Harris isn't ready to come back. And again, as of this recording, which is 5:30 on Monday, it's not official he's on the practice squad. It's his intent to sign on the practice squad. It's not pen to paper yet, and we saw this a couple weeks ago where it was intended for him to sign with the Buffalo Bills practice squad, and then another injury arose and he didn't end up doing that. I think he's going to end up eventually signing to the practice squad, and he might do that by the time this episode airs, and I'm going to look like an idiot. But I honestly think this is just another depth signing where it's covering their butts in case Murray goes down, because Murray does have a lot of wear and tear on those aged legs. I think he's the oldest running back in the league. Fournette looks cooked, but he can still pass block, and he's still a reliable pass catcher out of the backfield. I don't think he is a solution to any of the woes in the red zone, but once I don't have the stat, and I heard it this morning, their Bills are like one of the worst teams in the red zone in converting to touchdowns in the last year. And it's amazing when you have a freak athlete like Josh Allen, but hopefully them seeing the brotherly push in Philly will help them a bit more. And I understand Philly has an unbelievable offensive line. Hurts is an unbelievable sneaker, but you have Josh Allen for a reason. Put him in shotgun, or line up behind set, do something, change it up and get a little bit creative. But they definitely have to address that moving forward for the offense, just to be able to punch that in, because you could have went up 17-0 with that final, or no, it would have been, I'm sorry, their turnovers on downs, it would have put you up 10-0. So it's definitely something that they got to work on there.
Yeah, and we can move over to the defense. I thought the defense played really well overall. I mean, other than allowing Tampa to come all the way back at the very, very end and have a shot, for the most part, they played a really, really good game the entire game. Taron Johnson is starting to scare me a little bit as far as a goal line cover man. I think in 3 straight games, he's been beat on the same play now, where they just go right at him, cut it inside, and score a touchdown. I know it was a really good catch, really good throw by Godwin and Mayfield, but at the same time, being burned by the exact same play 3 straight games, I think he's turning into a little bit of a red zone liability. Overall, he's still a really good player. I'm not saying anything against him throughout the game, but when they get closer to the goal line, he seems to be getting beat inside. I think it's 3 straight games he's allowed a touchdown on pretty much the exact same play where, again, they just run right at him, cut inside, and then a quick throw. But for the most part, I thought the defense was really, really good. Only other negative was Rachaad White going 7 for 70 out of the backfield. I think in a way that's kind of a good thing because it means you're covering all the other wide receivers. Evans didn't have much of a game at all other than the one kind of lucky-ish touchdown. Godwin had a few good plays, but for the most part, they did okay against him. So, I mean, Mayfield is kind of forced to throw to Rachaad White and everyone else is downfield and kind of just clears the way for him, I get it. For the most part, they held his rushing in check, so it was mainly just his receiving, but there were a few times that he should have been tackled and kind of sprung it for long yardage. It's just something that the defense has struggled with the whole season, is allowing that running back to do something, either, one big run or a few catches out of the backfield for a lot of yards. And in a bend don't break kind of defense, it's going to happen. So 7 for 70 is not brutal out of the backfield, but also seemed to be the one play the Bills struggled against most of the game.
Yeah, I didn't even mind that late touchdown because they went 17 plays, 92 yards, and it took 7 minutes and 21 seconds off the clock. And the Bills also gifted them 2 first downs on that one. Taron Johnson got a legal contact on a 4th and 10, which turned that into an automatic first down. And then for some reason, Jordan Phillips decides to grab the face mask of a player who was going down regardless, and they had no option. He wasn't breaking your tackle. I don't know why he had to grab his face. So two penalties there gave the Buccaneers new life on 4th down, and the second one is 4th and 10. The first one is second one is 4th and 8. The first one is 4th and 10. So both times they kicked themselves in the foot and allowed the drive continue. And then Mike Evans, which again, Phil, I was half a tackle or a tackle assist away from $805 on a $5 bet. But that Mike Evans touchdown catch off the helmet was it benefited me a lot. But I definitely had no problem with the defense whatsoever in this one. I thought it was a nice bounce-back performance, but you need your offense to score early and get up early if you want your defense to be able to perform the way they did on Thursday night.
Yeah, agree. I think overall the defense, the whole team looked good. Again, like you said, I think the biggest real concern for the team was just not putting the game away when they had the opportunity. Like you said, they were kind of toying with them. Don't toy with them. Just put the game away. Keep scoring and end the game. For it to come down to a Hail Mary, I don't really think it was as close as people were saying, but it was closer than it should have been at the end of the game. Not even to get a field goal. Like you said, 0 points last 25 minutes. I think that's just still a big mentality shift that McDermott needs to get past. Just not putting these games away, going into a very conservative shell, letting your defense play really well. And I know it kind of worked out, but at the same time, against these better teams that are always going to possibly be able to score on you, you just have to find a way to put these teams away. And I think they had the opportunity to do it, and they just kind of let it go. And for it to get that close to a Hail Mary at the end of the game just seemed like it didn't need to come down to that if they would have just kept pushing.
So very, very quick look around the league. This last week, Titans won, Colts lost, Dolphins beat the Patriots, Jets won in the worst, ugliest game I possibly have ever seen. Jags defeated the Steelers, Texans lost, Browns lost. Broncos defeated the Chiefs, first time in Patrick Mahomes' history. 16 straight wins I think he had over Denver. He finally lost one. Ravens, Bengals, and Chargers all won. So the standings currently, Kansas City, Miami, Jaguars, and Baltimore all lead their divisions, and their top 4 teams in the AFC at 6-2. Bills coming in at 5-3 at the 5th seed. Steelers and Cleveland in that order are 4-3. That rounds out the current playoff standings. And then you got the Jets, the Bengals sitting at 4-3, Texans, Titans, and Chargers all sitting at 3-4. And the Bills' upcoming schedule, Phil, no 1 o'clock games. Whoopee for me. Next Sunday. This Sunday coming up at Bengals, Sunday Night Football. Following week, Monday Night Football, home versus Denver. Following week, Sunday 4:25 game, home versus the Jets. And then that following week, I think it's right after Thanksgiving, 4:25 in Philly. None of those are very easy. Even the Denver game, which I thought might have been easy going in, their defense has kind of fixed it a bit, and they just beat Kansas City. So those next 4 games, you have to win at the very least, half of them, if not 3 out of 4.
And they are all winnable if this team plays
Agreed.
how we know
Yes.
they can play. If they play the offense like they just did, the defense like they just did, and I mean, we'll see what happens again when this comes out, whatever trades that are going to happen for the Bills would have officially happened by then. We don't have that information because it's not trade deadline day, but we'll see if the Bills make any moves to kind of solidify the defense a little bit. I don't see them doing much on offense. Maybe a Hunter Renfrow would be nice, but after this last game, I think Shakir stepped into that kind of role overall pretty nicely. So offense, don't see much. Defense, we'll see if they get anything in a trade. But for the most part of this team, even remains how they are. I think they're okay, but they just have to continue to put complete games together. And this offense needs to continue to look like it did against the first half against Washington. And they should be okay to at least be in all of these games. And they are all winnable. Even the Eagles, I don't know what the heck just happened to them. Their offense keeps plugging away to keep winning, but their defense is struggling a weird amount.
Yeah, it's weird. The offense scored less points this week than they did versus the Patriots the week before, and you feel better. It's just, it's what you're watching. The stats might not back it up, and the whatever fancy analytical stuff that you want to put out there might be worse in this game. It's the fact that you got up early and allowed your defense to, it allowed their offense and made their offense adjust to what you were playing with. And that was my key point, and that's the biggest way that you can help your defense, especially going in the Bengals. Bengals look absolutely terrifying on offense right now, and their defense is very good. That's going to be a mammoth of a game next Sunday night, and I'm not looking forward to it being at 8:15 because if I have to go to bed angry, I'm not going to go to sleep until 2 o'clock. So they better come out and perform very well. But I will say that sitting at 5-3, fifth seed in the AFC right now, you're a half a game behind Miami because you have the tiebreaker right now. I've stopped pouring dirt on them. They're still, in the grave, but the dirt has stopped being poured on them. I still think they should make the playoffs. They should make the playoffs looking at the Steelers and Cleveland and the Jets right behind them. The only team really behind them that I'm terrified of is the Bengals. So they should make playoffs. Theoretically, they should make the playoffs. But they lost to the Patriots 2 weeks ago, and it looked absolutely pathetic. So long way to go. Season's like, what is it, not even half over? They're got 9 more games to go. So long season to go. Phil, we'll move on to Fantasy Blitz here. We can only discuss one because you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who is playing tonight as of this recording, 5:40 on Monday, so we don't have that ranking yet, kind of like I had with Prescott. Hopefully you have the same luck. I had Devin Singletary last week. Didn't come through. He did get the boost in snaps, but he didn't get the boost in points. So, Phil, who is your Week 9 Fantasy Blitz player to keep an eye on?
I am going to the player that you actually just mentioned. Coming off his best game of the season, Dak Prescott is currently ranked 16th, coming off a 300-yard forward touchdown performance against the Rams. Prescott now gets the Eagles. Again, like I just said, that seems like a scary kind of matchup because the Eagles overall should have a good defense, but they just allowed Sam Howell to throw for 397 yards and 4 touchdowns on what is essentially a pretty awful Washington offense. So for them to allow that much, I think Prescott can probably pull that off. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game between those two teams. I know Dallas's defense is really good, but the Eagles' offense also looks really good. So it could end up being a shootout, and if they allowed that to Sam Howell, I think Prescott can repeat a similar performance of at least probably 300 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns. So he is my pick of the week.
How dare you insult Sam Howell?
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about Sam Howell.
He's make or break. He is all or nothing.
He has some great games. You're like, wow, this is a decent QB, and then he has games where he's looks atrocious, and you're like, okay, what the heck did you just do?
Yep. I am going with the player that is catching receptions from the player that my brother dressed up as for Halloween, Gardner Minshew. Although he had a Eagles jersey of him. That's a little insulting, but he made his own jorts, so I'll give him that. Josh Downs, 29th ranked right now. Last 4 weeks with Gardner Minshew, he's got 6 receptions, 5 receptions, 5 receptions, and 7 receptions. He's had no fewer than 10.6 points. Minshew absolutely loves targeting him, so if you're in a PPR league, he is definitely a must start. He's also been his favorite pass catcher. He's facing Carolina, so they're going to score points. And Indy has been one of the fastest pace of play teams in the league. That means you're going to get a lot of plays. That means you're going to get a lot of offense. That means if you have another player on Carolina, like I do with Adam Thielen, and I think I'm facing you this upcoming week, that's another target as well. But I think Josh Downs has a very good chance to have a couple deep ball shots and a lot of underneath catches and be in the top 12 of wide receivers this coming up week.
Yeah, you've done pretty well on the waiver wire kind of random ads.
I have, but they haven't turned into wins because unless I get 60 points out of Goff, St. Brown, and Jacobs tonight, I'm looking at a 3-5 record. So it hasn't really turned into wins. So hopefully the change of tides is coming.
It's possible, though. I mean, I'm not happy we have to play each other next week because we both need to win. So
we both need wins, yes.
That's,
the best outcome.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, best outcome is I pull off the win here, go to 4-4, and then if you upset me, it's not as bad. But if you upset me next week where I'm 3-5 and go to 3-6, and we're both sitting at 3-6, it's not great. Not great. But Phil, we'll move on to the Buffalo Sabres here. 4 games since the last time we talked, and what's nice is there's not going to be a game until this episode comes out, so we're not going to have to play massive catch-up. 4 games. We'll talk about an overview of all of them unless there's some points in a specific game you want to talk about. But Monday they lost 3-1 versus Montreal. I was on Talking Buffalo, instant reaction on that one. Tuesday they came back and bounced back very well. They won 6-4 in Ottawa. Friday versus New Jersey, they lost 5-4, and then Sunday, of course, they won this one because they were in their black and red 4-0 versus Colorado. Phil, what stood out? Any things in the games? Any major talking points you want to talk about for the 4 games for the Buffalo Sabres?
I thought the games all went really well. I think they are similar to how their entire season has kind of looked. I think that they've looked like a much better team than their record shows. I think they've lost a lot of games they should have won. The Canadiens being a huge one, outshot them 37-27. Realistically, I thought the Sabres looked like a much better team in that game than the Canadiens did, but the Canadiens just stole that one. Allen played absolutely ridiculous and made some insane saves to keep them in it, and not only keep them in it, but give them the win 3-1. Senators, I thought they played really well. I thought that one was interesting that they had 3 tipped goals. I think that game, I know they won 6-4. I think they got a little bit lucky to get the 6 they did. A lot of their goals were interesting. Again, redirects. There were 3 of them. And then the other goal where Skinner was behind the net and banked it in. Another just kind of weird goal. So I think that one looked good, but it was a weirder game than I think the score suggests. Devils, I think they definitely should have won that one as well. Devils are supposed to be one of the better teams in the league this year. I thought they looked really good against them. I thought they played really well. Again, Vanacek just absolutely stole that game for the Devils as well. I mean, losing it as close as they did, I think it's really unfortunate they didn't get at least a point in that game because I think they deserved that or the win, but Vanacek played incredible. And then Colorado, they played like a team that finally got the win they deserve. They got the goaltending that they really needed in that game, and kind of the first time they've really, really showed up for the team in a long time. But Colorado was the win that I think they could have gotten in pretty much any one of these games. And the team as a whole has outplayed their opponent in most of the games this season, but the wins just have not come. But if you're going to lose, I'd rather be the better team in a loss, because hopefully in the future that will kind of right the ship, and more often than not, you'll get those wins.
Yeah, I mean, 12-1-1 in their black and reds in the last 2 years.
Insane.
At this point, Phil, the sample size is big enough where they should just make the full-time switch to it, because they'll never lose again. Yeah, I mean, they have to. It's the only solution here. The biggest issue I have with the Buffalo Sabres is they haven't been consistent yet. They lost the first 2 games of the year, and then they've won, lost, won, lost, won, lost. So it's back and forth. They need to go on some type of run here that will get them, back in it. I know, let me pull up the standings here really quick, because I fully believe that as I'm buying time, as I'm pulling it up, and I'm pulling it up right here, they are literally 2 points. 2 points from last in the whole Eastern Conference. But if you also look, they're 2 points from the 2 points from the second wildcard spot behind the Lightning. So it's definitely very early. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. It's a very long season. They played 9 games. It's just they have to go on some type of run to start jumping teams, because this is not a season and this is not a team that you want battling back from being down a lot. You got to start some kind of winning streak here where maybe the Colorado one is a good start to it, where they won 4-0. UPL, I have to start thinking about issuing an apology. I'm not going to yet because it's still a very short season, but he's looked very, very good. He's actually looked competent with Levi out. It stinks because Comrie actually was looking good as well, so he's hurt, so we'll see what happens there. They called up Cooley and then sent him back down because they don't play until Wednesday, like I said, when this is airing. But UPL has looked very good. He looked very good in the Colorado game for sure. The other thing, the offense is actually starting to come around, and I'm excited about it because early in the season, they weren't scoring. And it got me back to the point where I'm going, okay, what happens if what I was worried about actually comes to fruition, where so many players had such big-time games and big-time seasons last year. How many milestones and how many career seasons did they have last year? Dahlin, Skinner, Middlesex, Cousin, Thompson, Tuck, all had monster seasons last year and career seasons. It was asking a lot for them to repeat that. Goal scoring is coming back now. They're averaging 3 goals a game. They've scored 27 goals in 9 games. Before that, wasn't it like 15 goals or something like that in the first 6 games or something like that, where they just weren't scoring? Now 12 goals in the last 4 games. It's a huge turnaround. Skinner's playing unbelievable right now. Middlestad's looking like a legit number 2 center and just feeding anybody who's willing to take it. Dahlin's on a, I think, 8-point game streak right now. I think the biggest thing that is also helping this turnaround is Alex Tuch. He does, after the Montreal game, on Talking Buffalo, we were going, Tuch has got to be injured or something. He has flipped the script since those last 3 games, and he's definitely come on strong. My biggest and last question here for you, fellas, Zach Benson. And this is going to be a talking point more towards the end of the week, but again, we air this on Wednesday, and we won't talk again until next week. He's got 3 more games until he reaches his 9 games played. And we know Matt Savoie, his conditioning reassignment down in Rochester is coming to an end as well. What would you do, and what do you think they're going to do with Zach Benson, again, coming up on his 9 games, whether he stays with the big league club or he's going to go back down to juniors?
Yeah, it's really, really tough.
Yep.
Again, right
Even
now...
Even worse when you're stuck with 3 goalies on your team.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're down to 1. But I think Levi's supposed to be ready essentially to go kind of whenever. I think they said he was healthy for the Colorado game, but they didn't want to play him yet. But I don't know. I don't know because you're kicking somebody out. Again, Olofsson is the first one that comes to mind, but Benson's looked really good. I feel like he's a difference maker for this team, even if it's not a ton. It's the secondary scoring you need as a good team to kind of continue looking good. I mean, in the power play, I forgot which game it was. I think it might have been Colorado, but one of the games he was in the middle of the power play and he looked incredible. He looked really, really good. He knew what he was doing. He was literally in the center of the whole thing. He ended up getting stuffed on a great opportunity, but he had a few great passes. Again, I mean, the biggest thing with him and what we've seen is that he looks comfortable playing in the NHL. And I think for a kid that age, that's huge. And I think that's the one thing you'd want to see the most from him. I mean, the points and stuff like that might not come for a little bit. He hasn't had his first goal yet, but he's getting closer. But the biggest thing is just his comfort level in the NHL. Like, can you see him producing season long? And I think you can. So at that point, it's, again, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit earlier in the season, that it's pretty much useless, I think, for me, in my opinion, to send him back to juniors. I think it would just be a waste of his development. I don't think he's going to gain anything by going back to juniors, but can you realistically... I don't know. I feel like it's just he's got to stay. I mean, for the most part, I think he's got to stay because Savoie is in a similar situation where his AHL tryout's almost over, and then he's possibly going to have an NHL tryout, and then, again, he's in the exact same situation, which just stinks for both of these players that you end up sending one likely back to juniors, and I don't think it helps either of them. I think this whole setup with the NHL is terrible. I think the fact that players that are this good have to get sent to juniors instead of the AHL or the NHL is just ridiculous. But for both of them, I think the Sabres are in trouble to me. I think their development will be stunted a little bit if either of them get sent back to juniors. I think it's just a waste for them given what they've shown. But I don't know if you have the roster ability to have both of them on it with Quinn eventually coming back as well.
Yeah, I just looked. It looks like, according to ESPN, they put Eric Comrie on the injured reserve, so there is a spot open. So currently they have two goalies on their active team, so they do have a spot open because Devin Cooley was called up. He got sent back down. I honestly think what they're trying to do is just use these two players to get them to when Jack Quinn is healthy. Right now, if they really wanted to, they could milk these games a bit more with Zach Benson and kind of, give him a rest day and have Jost and Olofsson back in the lineup and kind of milk those until Savoie is ready to come up, and then you just bounce them back and forth and back and forth. I'm wondering if Savoie's more ready than Benson, and they're just, once Savoie's ready, they can bring both up, have them practicing, and once Benson hits his 9 games, they send him down to juniors. And again, I'm not a fan of it. I think he's better in AHL than, juniors, but they don't really have an option. I think he has an NHL skill set. I don't know if he has an NHL body frame yet. He's involved in every play. It just seems like he gets knocked down too easy and he takes too many penalties. In 6 games, he's already got 6 penalty minutes. That's not ideal. It's a lot of tic-tac penalties where he's too active with his stick, it seems like. That's my biggest knock on him. But he brings that energy and that, X factor to the team where I think having that youth in the lineup, and again, this team is the youngest in the NHL, so what am I saying youth? But adding an 18-year-old into the lineup that just isn't afraid of anything to go into the corners and go along the boards and set players up, I think he's an added element to this team. The biggest issue moving forward is when Eric Comrie's healthy again, you're back to stuck with 3 goaltenders. So it's can you manage to have 3 goalies on your active roster along with Savoie and Benson? It's just a time crunch here, along with Jack Quinn coming back. So I really think in the end, what they're going to end up forcing to have to do is send Benson down, see if Savoie's ready, and Savoie can get you to Quinn. And then once Quinn's healthy, then you have another roster crunch number. It's just, this is another reason why I didn't like carrying 3 goalies. Again, Comrie and UPL have slowly and started to prove me wrong so far. Again, so small sample size, not ready to issue an apology yet, but carrying 3 goaltenders is an issue for that. So it's leaving you with tough decisions like this because right now, Jost, Olofsson, or Benson, one of those 3 is always out of the lineup, and then you got Bryson right now filling in for Clifton, who got suspended. It's just, it's tough. It'll be very interesting what they do, but I think I lean that they're probably going to end up sending him back to juniors just because of the roster crunch and the numbers that just don't work in his favor.
Yeah, I could completely see that. And before we move on from the Sabres, I wanted to do kind of a every 10-game update. We're at 9 games to see kind of what they're doing. So currently, like you mentioned, they're 4-5, last in the Atlantic, but they are 14th in goals for so far, 22nd in goals against with a goal differential of 0, which isn't terrible. Dahlin and Skinner tied for the team lead in points with 9. Skinner has the most goals on the team with 5. Dahlin the most assists with 7. Thompson and Peterka each have 4 goals. Tuck only has 1. Like you said, he's starting to come on a little bit stronger, but if he can get his scoring touch going, I think his assists have looked much better, but if he can score as well, I think he's just an added element this team's slightly missing a little bit. Power and Yoki have the best plus-minus at +6 and +4. Clifton has the worst at -6, but I think he's actually played pretty good so far this season. UPL and Comrie, like you just mentioned, are at a .915 and .914 save percentage, playing, I would definitely say, better than we expected. Even these last few games with UPL, I think most of the goals he was giving up were not really his fault. He was left out to dry on a lot of them. And then Levi is struggling to start the season with an .892 save percentage, but for a goalie that young, it's kind of what we expected. Hopefully he comes back a little bit healthier, and we will see what he can bring. But little 10-game update. 9, actually.
And another one with Alex Tuck. He's got 19 shots on the season. He's shooting 5.3%. That's going to come up to the means in the teens and low 20s again. So his scoring is eventually going to bounce back. He's not,
Agreed.
Like I said, he's not been performing the way we started to the start of the season, but I think he's turning it around at the perfect time. So again, we'll go over the next games. They're playing Wednesday when this is airing as their next game, so we won't have as much of a backlog to talk about on the next show. Phil, we'll move on to our final topic here. Buffalo Bandits, another name signed right after this aired, or last time this episode aired. Toho Kananeko, 2-year deal. Phil, it's not a 1-year deal. what is going on in Dietrich's office right now that he's willing to hand out 2-year deals, but love having him back for two full years. There was no worries he was going to go anywhere because he didn't reach RFA status yet, so his rights were still with Buffalo Bandits. But he is in tow right in time for training camp, which kicks off this coming weekend.
Yeah, really, really great to have him back. Obviously, something we were hoping for, looking for. Like you said, wasn't actually going anywhere, but 2 years is a big deal. He's been a ridiculously talented player. The things he is able to do, pretty much just insane. And like you said, we don't talk about it too much. We know what he can do. Wasn't really threatened by him leaving by any means, but excited to see 2 years. I do wonder if Dietrich has a wheel that he spins that has like 1, 2, and 3 on it, and just whatever it lands on, that's the contract they get maybe that day. But excited to see him back for 2, not just 1 year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, last year he played in 13 games and scored 21 goals, 18 assists, 39 points. That's a bit down from his rookie year, but a lot of players go through that sophomore slump, and I'm not calling this was a slump at all. It's just the name of it, where a lot of players, once you're in the league your rookie year, the following year, defenses and coaches and everybody has more video on you in this league, so they're able to adjust it a bit more the following year, and that might be why you saw those numbers dwindle a little bit, plus 5 games missed. I expect a massive season from him next year just because, once teams adjust to you, the good players go back and readjust to their adjustments. A lot of adjustments there. I think he is one of the best young players in the league. I think his skill set is something that the Buffalo Bandits don't really have, and I don't think very many teams have this kind of skill set where the ball's in his stick and you just can't physically get it out. He draws so many penalties for a team that has such a lethal power play. He is an integral piece in this offense that is just going to get better and better and better. Phil, he's only stinking 25 years old. He's played in 31 games in this entire league. He's got a long career ahead of him, and I'm not saying he's going to take over for Dane Smith because Dane Smith's only, 31 years old? Those two are going to continue to grow on that for the righties over there for the the rest of Dane Smith's career, and Toke and Anacoke's going to be here as long as I think the Buffalo Bandits will have him, and hopefully that's a very long time, but 2-year deal. So Phil, our main talking point in this area before we start getting into the month of November more than we are right now, because it is November 1st when you're listening to this, but we got a schedule that I'll go over after this. Phil, the biggest talking point last week, we went over the 9 quote-unquote rookies that are in camp that could make a push to the active roster, the practice squads. Now we're going to go over the vets who could lose the spots to some of those rookies that we have on the bubble. We already went over our mock, 25-man roster with the 21 active for practice squads, where we're kind of going to dig more into the players that could be on the bubble. I guess we'll start with the forwards. Are there any big names that come to your mind that could be in trouble, whether they lose that active roster spot, the practice squad, or, just go on and get cut and possibly find another team out there to sign with?
Yeah, a lot of the interesting thing about this whole entire thing is, for me, I was looking at players that were on the bubble last year already, didn't get a lot of play time. Injury history to me was a huge part of this, especially given all the injuries they dealt with last year. And then, like you said, the rookies coming into camp, who can push some of these guys out. And the big thing about the rookies is that there's at least one in every category to me that has a chance to make some noise. I'm not saying they will, but there's a couple defenders, a forward transition, and a goalie. So in theory, everyone is fighting for a spot, especially some of these bubble guys. So I think all of it kind of goes in together. For the forwards, I don't think there was much there. There's some players that just, again, don't play as often, like Sam LaRue hasn't really got a big chance, but the team seems pretty heavily invested in him. Brandon Robinson's the big name on that list for me, which is kind of depressing to say because I like what he brings a lot and what he was able to do in the 10 games he was able to play last year. But he has a injury history and in general, he just hasn't played a lot when given the opportunity. In the last 4 years, in 2019, he had 10 games. 2020, he had 4. 2021, they were off. 2022, he only played in 3 games. And then last year, he played in 10. So his history of playing a lot of games in a season just isn't really there right now in his career, which worries me as far as making the team. I think what he does bring is incredible. What he was able to show last year was huge on offense, but at the same time, he hasn't played more than 10 games in the last 4 seasons, and I think that worries me as far as injury history and to see if anyone can push for his spot that just might be a little bit more consistent of being on the field.
Yeah, I'll talk with Brandon Robinson first. I had him making the practice squad, and I still do.
I do love him and don't want him to miss.
Right. The biggest issue that I have with him is he does a lot of the things that Brad McCulley does, and Brad McCulley is younger by a year, but they also have draft capital in him. They've invested time and resources into developing him. He was a former first-round pick. Brandon Robinson was a street free agent that they signed last year to be that big body, and then Brad McCulley kind of took that role over. I don't think there's room on the active roster for both Brad McCulley and Brandon Robinson, and that's why I had Brandon Robinson possibly squeaking out. The other issue is he fully healthy going into training camp? That's something that we don't know. That's could be a big talking point going into the season is he fully healthy, ready to go, or will he start on one of the injured lists, that the multitude injured lists that they have? That's the biggest thing for him, and that might be the blessing for him is if he's not fully ready. Right. If he's not fully ready, that's another spot that you can use so you don't lose a player in free agency. I think that's what a lot of possible fans are, that, we're hoping that they're fully healthy, but they're just not ready for game action yet, because that's a way to, kind of sneak them out of the roster and keep them, from going into free agency. Because if Brandon Robinson hits free agency, I think he's signing elsewhere. The other name, you already mentioned it, Sam LaRue. Team's very high on him. I mean, they were able to switch his designation to defenseman, 2 off seasons ago when the Vegas Golden Knights or Vegas Desert Dogs came into the league, and they had the draft, and they were able to put him as a defenseman because that's where he played that year. So I think they value him very highly. He's made it through how many expansion drafts? They've protected him multiple times. They've re-signed him multiple times. I think he is safe, but for the righties over there, it's very, very deep. They got Kyle Buchanan. And he's not going anywhere. They got Chase Frazier. They got Tehoka Nanako. They got Dane Smith. It's a very deep position over there. The blessing that he has is Nate Kuznetsnikov did get traded. And both of those guys, and we said it early in the offseason, was there was probably only room for one of those two guys going into camp and making this roster. They shipped Nate K off to Saskatchewan. That leaves Sam LaRue here. That's his option to lock down that practice squad spot for the righties on the forward group and kind of take it by the bowl and lock that spot in on the practice squad. And I do have him making it. It's just this, to me, this is a big year for Sam LaRue. If he can show that he is ready to take that step, because Kyle Buchanan, how many more years does he have? He's that little water bug, that Energizer bunny that we talk about nonstop. But he's also 35, going to be 36 entering the season. Actually, his birthday was just passed, so he is 36. I apologize. It was on 22nd, so happy belated birthday to Kyle Buchanan. He's got that championship. How many more years can he and does he want to play? There could be an opening on there for the righties next year. Can Sam LaRue step up and take that by the horns and run with it?
Yeah, the thing that concerns me about LaRue the most, I think, is that when given the opportunity with all the injuries last year, his name was only called upon twice, whereas Nate K seemed to be the one they were choosing over him. And I know, obviously, like you said, Nate K's gone. It is what it is. But Nate K was able to get into 3 games, has a goal, 2 assists last year. And LaRue seemed to be the one that was behind him. And like you said, they're very high in him. I for that reason alone, and how many times they protected him, how young he is, I don't think he's going anywhere. But the fact that they were choosing to get Nate K in the active roster over him concerns me a little bit for his chances this year, and just what somebody else may be able to push for his spot. But like you said, I think they have a lot invested in him, so I don't think he's going anywhere, but he concerns me a little bit there.
So Phil, who from the defense / transition game that are more veteran type players, they don't have to be fully veteran, you know what I mean, but players that were on the team last year that could be in trouble of losing their roster spot to one of the rookies or one of the newcomers that are coming in?
Yeah, for this one, I have, again, two bubble guys that didn't get a lot of play time last year, and very concerningly for both of them, didn't get any in playoffs. Two players that I like, and I think that's a big part of this discussion. These aren't players that we are hoping don't make the team. These are players we just think might not make the team because other talented players are also pushing for their spots. So we do like these players. We do hope they make the team, but for me, Carter McKenzie is one of them who I like quite a bit, pretty high on, but I think he might be in trouble this year. And Dalton Silver is another one. Both of those players had 0 playoff games, which is concerning that they weren't able to rotate in at all. But Carter McKenzie had 12 games last year. Dalton Silver did end up playing in 10. So throughout the season, they got quite a bit of looks as the injuries kind of piled up. I thought Silver and McKenzie both looked good when they were able to get in. The other two that concerned me a little bit due to injury history, Adam Bomberry, I think, is pretty much a lock to stay because of how well he did. He did end up playing in all 6 playoff games last year, even though he was battered and bruised and beaten a ton in playoffs, but he was still able to find a way to play and then finally got some health after the season. So I think he's one. I don't think he's going anywhere based on how well he played and just how much he pushed through playoffs while playing injured. I think they're going to absolutely see that and love it, but he only played in 9 games last year. I know he was traded to the team, but he did have a little bit of injury trouble. Before that, he's played in 16 games in 19, 7 games in 2020, and 11 in 2022. So he hasn't really played too much of a full season in the last few years, but at the same time, I don't think he's really going anywhere. I think he played really well in playoffs and, again, played through the injury. This one is confusing to me as from what I was able to find. I've mentioned him before, but I think this information is wrong. But Frank Brown in the last 4 years, 2019, he played in 14 games. 2020, he played in 5. 2022, he's only able to play in 4. And then 23, I don't know, from the information I had, he played in 0, but I feel like that's wrong.
He didn't play at all. He stayed on the PUP list the whole year.
I thought I could have swore I saw him out there last year. Maybe
Nope.
It was 2 years ago. So last year, like you just said, he played in 0, so that is concerning. I know we had a few fans mention that he is training really hard, looks really healthy, looks like he is ready to go for this training camp. So I think he's going to make a huge push. I know the team really likes him. We haven't really had a chance to see what he can do in a full healthy season, but he's one that just due to injury concerns me as well as just being on that bubble. Again, these aren't players that we hope don't make it, but just ones that concern us a little bit with some of these rookies coming in to be able to push for a spot.
Yeah, I have most of those names. I think Adam Bomberry is a safe lock just because of what he did in the playoffs, so I'm not really... Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what you said. It's just the injury history that is a little bit concerning. The other 3 names, Carter McKenzie, Dalton Silver, I had them both on the bubble already in my mock. Again, like you said perfectly, it's not that we don't wish that these players were going to make the team. I'm high on all these players. It's just... we've said it so many times now. The roster is just so deep right now, and there's not enough spots for everybody. So there are going to be roster constraints, and you're going to see players have to be chopped or traded away or any of those situations because there's just not room. Carter McKenzie's number 1 on my list because he was up and down off the practice squad a lot last year. I think he has that big-bodied frame that you want, but they also brought in 2 first-round draft picks from 2022 in Cam Wires and Zach Belter that play a similar role to Carter McKenzie that have similar size, and they have draft capital in those. So I think you favor the draft picks over a street free agent that you did re-sign this year, but played sparingly and played very well in the sparingly time. But he could be a player that is similar to Jordan Storos last year, where he is a good player, but the roster numbers just push him out. Dalton Silver, this one is that he plays a role that was such a key piece to the biggest game that stood out to me for him is when they faced New York. They put him on one-on-one against Jeff Teat in that second half, and they shut down Jeff Teat. He has that type of role and that type of player, and that's one element that would be missed if he's not on this team, is somebody that can match speed for speed and game for game with Jeff Teat on the defensive side of the ball and shut down Jeff Teat, because Jeff Teat can take over a game. You saw that 2 years ago when they beat Buffalo. I think it was away. Where they won that game. where Jeff Teague can just take over a game. If you have a player like Dalton Solver, he can shut that player down. And then the last one is Frank Brown. And it's simply because we haven't seen enough of him yet. Where do they value somebody else that is younger, that doesn't have the same injury history as him? I want Frank Brown on the team because I think he adds an element to the transition game that we've only really seen from Ian McKay, that speed and that toughness, and that he's a big guy too, running up and down that field. We saw it sparingly in the year before they won the championship where they lost in the finals to Colorado. We saw that sparingly in the playoffs and the final few games when he was coming back again from injury. So if he can stay healthy and he can make this team, I think he's going to add an element to this game and take it even further in the transition game. And then the last name, it's in quotations right now because he's not signed to a deal, but Max Adler. And when you have this is not a shot at him whatsoever because, again, I'm not trying to take shots at any of these players. Again, it's just roster constraints. Can you afford to have a roster spot on a face-off guy who, yes, absolutely annihilated in the playoffs, but can you afford a roster spot on this deep of a roster for a face-off guy? I know he added a little bit more. Can he, in his third year, if he does get signed and come into camp, add a little bit more to his game so he can stay on the field more, so he's less of just a Fogo and more of a guy like Joe Nardella or Jake Withers or somebody like that? Not at that level, but somebody that can also play defense and add more value to his position and his spot on the roster than just simply take a face-off, get off the field.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioning Withers got me excited. He's
Sorry.
He's real good player.
Sorry,
Withers.
get you hot
But
and
yeah, I do agree that Adler needs to. I mean, like you said, he had a little bit more added to his game, and I think what he's able to do for the Bandits is something they haven't had for a long time. I do think he's an important part of this team, but at the same time, like you mentioned, you have so much talent not only on the roster, but a ton of talent that you are looking to potentially cut and not make the team simply because of roster constraints, and that includes a lot of these rookies coming in. Some of them are pretty high on the Bandits list that are not going to be able to make it. I'm very interested to see if there's going to be any off-season trades for a player like Carter McKenzie, who I think would immediately be scooped up by other teams if he does not make this roster. So I think Dietrich's going to have a really busy, interesting offseason as far as who's going to make the team, and then at the same time, can you work any trades before these players are just straight up cut. But Max Adler is an interesting one as far as just that, again, holding that roster spot. It's one that the Bandits have kind of moved on from other than the last few years with him. But before that, they didn't really have that guy, and they still did okay. So I do think he's important. I do like him on the team. But will the Bandits want to keep someone over him is going to be, like you said, he's not quite signed yet, but it will be an interesting thought to see what the Bandits end up doing. Do they want to continue having a face-off specialist, or do they want to keep another important player from going to waivers and being able to be signed by anybody? It's going to be a tough call, and I'm really happy that I don't have to make these roster constraints myself, because you and I are having a really tough time doing it in a hypothetical world, let alone a real one. So happy that we do not have to make these decisions.
Yeah, and again, Adler doesn't have a deal currently. His rights are still with Buffalo, but I just wanted to stress that because we're not saying that he could or couldn't make the team. We're just saying that he's currently not on a team, and he currently doesn't have a deal right now. That's the main point. But Phil, last one here, goalies. Steve Orleman and Delvin Shanahan, I think, are the two main veterans on this team that are fighting for the backup role. There's probably only room on this roster for one because you're likely not keeping three like the Buffalo Sabres did. It's one of those two to me, honestly, between Orleman and Shanahan.
Yeah, and I think, we've talked about it a lot this offseason, that I think Shanahan, to me, has the upper hand just being part of the system for as long as he has been. He knows the team really well. He knows Vince really well. So I think him just being here for as long as he has, again, to me, he hasn't proven any reason to move on from him. But at the same time, I do agree that it will be a really heated camp battle that could go to either of them. I for the most part, see it as kind of a 60-40 split. They brought Orleman in for a reason. I think he has an opportunity to make that backup spot if he makes a big enough impact. But at the same time, if they are similar in talent, they are the same age. So I think if they're both 8 out of 10s in the Bandits' mind after preseason, I think Shanahan takes it simply being familiar with the team, familiar with the system, and familiar with Vince, and just, again, being around for as long as he has. He knows everyone really, really well. So I think the team would be more comfortable having him on the bench simply because he's been here for as long as he has been, rather than Orleman coming in his first time as a Bandit. But I think for the most part, it'll be a really heated camp battle that could go either way if Orleman proves that he truly is the better backup. I think it's going to be very, very close.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a battle between those two, and I lean more towards Shanahan just because of what I've seen. I think Orleman has a better track record than Shanahan just because he's been given the opportunity when he was with New York. He kind of lost that starting job to Dunkerley last year, but the year before that he set rookie records, and he has that high he has the ability to lead a team. I think both of them are still young. I believe they're the same age.
24.
Let me
they're
see.
both 24.
Yeah, both 99. 3 months difference between the two, less than 3 months difference. Shanahan's less than 3 months older than Steve Orleman. So there you go, boom. But I really think it comes down to what you know and what you don't so far. And I still have Orleman on my practice squad. I haven't changed that. I haven't changed my roster so far from who I have making, and I might have to address it because Adler doesn't have a deal right now. But I still think that you lean towards what you currently have and what you currently have invested in Shanahan right now over Orleman. It's no shot at Orleman. I think keeping him in the organization on the practice squad is critical, especially because, knock on wood, Matt Vince is up there in age. I'm not saying, and he's better shape than 99% of the people in the league. So the chances of what happening, which I'm thinking of and I'm talking around it, could happen are very slim. But it is very important in a league like this to have multiple goalies that you can call up in an instant. Because as we saw in this last offseason, there's not very many goalies that hit the open market. There's word that Dylan Ward could have done it because he was a free agent. And guess what? He signed for 4 years in Colorado, and I already told everybody that he wasn't going anywhere. So I still think that it leans towards Shanahan, and I think Orleman is going to end up on the practice squad. But I honestly could see Orleman beating Shanahan and Shanahan on the practice squad. It's just I am excited and a little nervous to see what happens in camp between that backup goaltender behind Matt Vince.
Does it concern you at all with camp opening this weekend that Adler does not have a deal? Does that seem strange? Obviously, they still have time, a few days. They got about a week. I mean, I'm not really sure behind the scenes what's going on there, but is it interesting, at least to you, that it's we're within pretty much a week of them starting camp and Adler does not have a deal yet?
It could honestly be injury related. I'd have to look that up because he didn't play a ton in the PLL. So I'm going to have to look that up and see if he has some kind of injury where if he does, he wouldn't be in training camp anyway. Right. So there's not a big pressing issue to get him signed. The other thing is his rights are still with Buffalo. So it's not a huge pressing need to get him signed because he's not going to sign elsewhere.
You want him in camp, though, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
If he's
you would
healthy,
want him
I
in
think you'd
camp
want him signed
if he's
in
healthy.
there. So it's if he's healthy, I think it's interesting that you're within a week of camp and he does not have a deal. I know, like you said, he's not going anywhere other than the Bandits, but you'd want him in camp if he's going to be on your team.
Agreed. Yeah,
so
especially for
strange.
a player like him who, because I'm not saying he's a bubble guy, even though we're talking about he's a bubble guy right here, because he has that niche role that, Frazier has done it, and McKay has done it, and Weiss has done it a lot. But there's a difference between doing it occasionally and doing it like Max Adler did it and proving that he can do it in the playoffs. You want him in camp if he's healthy to see if he can expand that role a bit more, like I said, like a TD Erlin, like a Jake Withers, like a Joe Nardella, those type of players, and Trevor Baptiste, and players that can play the Fogo role but also play defense a bit more in the transition game because, again, he scored that massive goal that shut down the building and blew the roof off of it. But you got to expand on your role if you're going to make a top level team. And again, some of that might not be his fault where it's just Johnny T going, hey, do the face-off, win or lose, get off the field. And I would like to see that role expand a bit more. We said that last year we would like to see him on the field a bit more and, rather than just face off and get off the field. But it is a little concerning that he doesn't have a deal right now. But again, it's Monday. They don't open training camp until this weekend. So there is time for Steve Dietrich to get a deal done. If healthy, again, if healthy. But Phil, that pretty much wraps up any bubble guys that we have. Is there anything else with the Buffalo Bandits that you would like to mention before we roll on to what our schedule will look like moving forward?
All set here. I was going to say, other than the fact that I wish they played one. They need to open the season one of these years on Halloween. Just to get the black and orange to play on Halloween just once, and then they can shut it down for 2 months and play late December after that. That's fine. But I mean, it's just a shame that the black and orange don't get to play during spooky season. But that's all right.
A hot take for Phil.
Just
Phil.
one.
But,
just one game. One game.
One game and then take a break.
Yep.
For our upcoming schedule here, we will break a little fun news here. On next Wednesday's show, our segment for the Buffalo Bandits are going to be seasons bold predictions. So it's going to be a whole NLL bold predictions that we have for them. The following week, which will be the 15th of November, it will be our playoff predictions. We're going to pick the 8 playoff seeds and the teams that we think are going to make the playoffs and rank them 1 through 8. The following show will be November 22nd, which is right before Thanksgiving. We're going to run through our playoff teams and come to a finals and pick a winner for that following season, or for this coming up season, 2023, 2024. And the final show before we make our grand appearance to 2 week, November 29th, our Bandits Bowl prediction show will be a fun one. We're going to make some bold predictions for the upcoming season. Then the following week, December 4th, is our first time back on Monday, Friday. So the 4th and the 8th of December, we will be back 2 times a week, every Monday and Friday until the end of June when the NLL seasons wraps up. So 6 full months of hearing us twice a week, Monday and Friday. Phil, are you ready to go back to twice a week?
No.
Me either. This has been nice.
But I am excited. Yeah, I mean, again, we have full-time jobs, so twice a week, it's going to be a lot again. But at the same time, it's for the Bandits for the most part, and that's when everything is rolling between the Sabres, the Bills, the Bandits. Yep. Everyone is going full speed, so it's needed to not have these 4 games to discuss the Sabres plus the Bills plus the Bandits. So I'm excited as far as content that we will be able to talk about, because it's going to be a lot in the prime of all these seasons, but it's a lot of work going back to 2 games. So it's been a nice little break having just 1 a week.
Yeah, it'll be nice because we're probably going to stick with this schedule moving forward. 6 months on, 6 months off. It's not bad. It's not bad. I haven't enjoyed this 6-month break, but I am excited because that means that lacrosse season is kicking back up. But yeah, 4 more shows on Wednesday until our breaking news of back to Monday and Friday twice a week for 6 straight months, starting December 4th, where we talk about the weekend that was for the NLL, and then the following show on that Friday, we're going to preview the Buffalo Bandits game versus Albany. So Phil, if there's nothing else, I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow along with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.